Hi everyone, this is Devleena, your host, welcoming you all to another exciting episode of Iconic Ads with Devleena and Saurabh. I have my expert co-host with me, Mr. Saurabh Bajaj. Hi Saurabh.
Hi, all of you. Great to be here as usual.
Same here, Saurabh. I'm so excited again to discuss the next episode here. So, any other new category here to discuss, Saurabh? What
Yeah,
new?
I think it's been quite a ride already so far, right? With our journey into cement, jewelry, and I particularly enjoyed our last episodes on those. So, what else can we talk about, which is equally important during, say, the marriage season? Where jewelry is so important. I think there is something else that we do, right? Because that's the time of festivity. So whether it is a marriage or a Diwali, there are certain things that you do. You buy jewelry, you take up your houses. So what else do we do?
So when we say about marriages, festivals, jewelry, so I relate to with that jewelry and home decor, home furnishing. So something related to that. Can we move and dig deep into that category?
Yeah, that sounds good. And we have these beautiful ads of the paint category, where of course, Asian Paints talk about har ghar kuch kehta hai. Nerolac is the other brand that comes to your mind, and we got some beautiful work which has happened there. So you got something in the paints, in the home decor paint side.
Yeah, let's get into that. So I also have a guest who can talk about Nerolac paint. And if you remember, sort of, there was a interesting ad campaign which they brought up. There was a big umbrella, and that was shot in some different locations. So I think that would be very interesting to talk about the stories and behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think that's a really clutter-breaking ad. I think there was some celebrity connection there as well, and it was a beautiful ad. So I think let's talk about that for sure.
Can we play the ad here?
Let's go for it.
सूरज की मटकी ओए बारिश का रेला बल्ला घुमई के ओए नहले पे दहला अम्बरेला 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 खींच के अम्बरेला धूप है नीम बारिश कड़वा करेला ओ धूप है नीम बारिश करेला मीठी छुरी सा काटने चला अम्बरेला 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 अम्बरेला
जो बाहरी दीवारों पे नेरोलैक एक्सेल नहीं लगाएंगे उन्हें कुछ तो लगाना पड़ेगा और एक्सेल वाले घर उनके लिए तो बस पेंट ही काफी है। कांसाई की जापानीज टेक्नोलॉजी से बना एक्सेल।
So let me call our guest for today, Mr. Chandan Jha, who is a founder of Simple Tribe and who had handled the account that time with Nerolac, and he was a part of Publicis communication. So welcome, Chandan.
Hi Chandan, good to have you here again.
Before we proceed, if you let us know about your association with Nerolac at that time, how much your involvement was there with that particular brand ad, and your responsibility about your team, something if you just tell us so we can get something to visualize.
Business heads at Publicis. Okay. Like I said, so I used to handle the kitty of brands, and within that I had Ambuja, I had Nerolac, I had HDFC Mutual Funds and Bharti AXA and many others. Okay, so I had a fairly large team managing all these brands. So that's where it was. Nerolac was very close to my heart, right? Because it was the first business that I kind of took on when I got this place. One of the bigger businesses that we worked on while there was a lot of attention that this brand got. The entire senior management in that sense. So yeah, it was a very, so if Nerolac this is actually was one of the oldest businesses as well. Even when it used to be Ambience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a very long association with the brand.
So the idea is very prominent, I mean, using the umbrella and how, you're showing that the particular product's benefit.
Yeah, or maybe we can go back to the business problem. It was really, the setup for the business problem in this particular case.
There were two clear ranges, right? So there was an interior range and there was an exterior range of paints. Okay. There are two different seasons in which people look at either or, right? So when it is the festive, when it is the festive season, when people are coming in, Diwali hai, chahe wo shadi ka season ho ya whatever. In those kind of places, then it was always about the interior paints, right? Because you're greeting people inside the house, or you're trying to show off the house to many people. To that extent, it was also about your own expressions in many, right? And these are the various things that most paint companies anyways do. So there was always this thing of having high awareness, and awareness translated to sales in many ways, right? So every year it was a matter of putting out new expressions out there. It was one of those that every year you have to do a campaign for exterior paints, you have to do a campaign for interior paints at two different points in the year, right? Mm-hmm. Most exterior paints usually happen around the summers or just after the rains, depending on which part of the country you're really talking about. So that was more a media in terms of when and where it gets aired. Excel was competing straight outright with Asian Paints in that sense, right? And the question was always about gaining better top of mind recall.
So tell me, this whole category of exterior paints versus interior paints, can you just give us a little bit of an idea of how the landscape is? Are these the two broad categories? Are there some other categories? How is the paint industry?
There are multiples actually. So you can segment this into pricing from premium all the way till the whatever mass segments in that sense, right? Then it's also about applications. Where are you going to be applying? So obviously the big volumes come from exterior and interior paints per se, but they're also into other surfaces, right? So when it comes to grills, when it comes to specific, whatever appliances or everything else, right? So for example, Nerolac is very big in the industrial paint segment. So what you're not aware of is possibly a refrigerator being painted by Nerolac. And that's a segment that they don't advertise really, because it's largely B2B and it's nobody really repaints a fridge in that sense. There are many other surfaces such that you keep painting within the house. It's just that there are lots of brands and lots of things that appear out there. But these are the two things that actually drive brand salience.
Cool. Now, so just tell us, what is the key fundamental difference between interior paints versus exterior paints? Because this ad is clearly one about an exterior paint, but what is fundamentally the product difference, if any?
So, at a fundamental level, obviously the interior paints don't see as much weathering as compared to exteriors. Exteriors is like always facing the vagaries of the sun, right? Whether it's a sun, whether it's the rains, and then if some of the rainwater stays over or something happens, then have all those algae left behind and all that. And the third one really is in terms of bird droppings, right? Which don't get cleaned so often. So yeah, so that's one of the differences, right? Interiors don't get as dirty by the weather as much as people themselves, right? In interiors, the biggest worries is oily hands, dirty hands, touching the surfaces which kind of spoil your house. Actually, in the interior paint segment, you will notice I also Berger paints karta tha. Okay, of these kids going around and spoiling the walls or painting on it or writing on it or whatever, right? And they did whole thing of wet cloth and wipe it off and you can clean it up. So durability becomes a code in the exterior paint format, and in the interiors of course it's about beauty and it's about decor and it's looks nice, expresses my feelings about how I need to look at my house and how the house to make me feel. Right?
Yeah. So I think the interior ones are more like, for example, Mera Wala Pink or Mera Wala Blue, and then that whole Har Ghar Kuch Kehta Hai. I think both of these are more the pride of the owner for the interior paint. The story is more of an extension of myself. But yeah. I think weathering and durability is far more the exterior paint passion point.
Absolutely. So when you actually look at what Asian Paints did, or what Ogilvy did with Asian Paints, which was that vast Sunil Babu, right? जो सालों साल निकल जाते हैं पर घर वैसे का वैसा ही लगता है, right? Or for that matter, Nawab Saab ka, where they have those hundreds of horses running towards Nawab Saab. Nawab Saab is covered in dust, but Bangla to abhi bhi chamak raha hai. So that whole the whole category codes are currently the idea of durability, right? Always on.
The other thing which I found really interesting in the ad is that you have these two different umbrella scenarios. One for sunlight, other for rain.
So ironically, yes, that is how it was written for. We said that let's look at two themes of weather in terms of this country, right? So we said let's look at North India. North India, let's go to somewhere in Rajasthan, which is the sunniest or the hottest place. We could have equally gone to Andhra, but no, it's just the dry aridness which gave you a different perspective to what happens there. Plus, it's amazing that Kerala is the biggest exterior paints markets in our country.
Kerala, is it?
Yeah, because actually it's white. More than any other color, white as an exterior paint in Kerala is one of the biggest markets of it. So there was a specific ad we made for Twitter. So it's just about white, nothing else. But yeah, so that's how we picked up these two.
And was there ever a thought of having two different ads? One ad for just rain, the other ad for sunlight, or were you always thinking of one collage where both of them are interspersed?
Actually, we planned on editing it like that. There are shorter edits which are just sun and just rain. Ironically, when we were trying to shoot it, that was the idea. But we landed in Jodhpur, yeah. So it was shot in Jodhpur. So we landed in Jodhpur and that day it rained. In Jodhpur. And so you had cloudy skies in Jodhpur. And when we land in Kerala, when it's supposed to be raining, and we were there in the middle of June, right? In the middle of June, it's raining in Kerala. It was bloody sunny and it was not that. After the shoot got over, before we were leaving, trying to get back, it started raining the next morning, but it didn't rain 2 days that we were trying to shoot there.
Best laid plans.
Superb. So,
what do you think about the use of Shah Rukh Khan in this?
I don't know, I quite like it actually.
Brand?
And the fact that, and very natural, the way he is also standing there with an umbrella, looking at what's happening. I quite liked it personally.
Yes, good. Right.
Actually, I worked with him for almost 5 years on Nerolac.
Wow.
So,
You
I
have
really
any
love
plan?
it.
I mean, if I'm thinking, think big.
So it's amazing that उस समय हम कुछ ऐसा record कर रहे थे. I don't remember the exact line now, but it was more to the tune of saying Excel वाले घर versus Nerolac Excel वाले घर, right? We said यार तुम एक Nerolac Excel वाले घर लेके रख लो, ठीक है? ये board meetings में पता नहीं क्या होता है, कोई ना कोई बोले तुम्हें करना पड़ेगा. Okay, the script as approved did not have Nerolac Excel वाले घर, right? Because we said Nerolac last में तो भूल ही रहे ना. तो आपको फिर से मतलब कितनी बार आपको Nerolac करना है उसमें?
It will fight between brand and creative.
Yeah, so you should take it and keep, because the commercial will get stuck because you'll not have that as a take.
Who was the target audience that particular time you wanted to target? Consumer insights and why TV commercial as a medium you have chosen that?
If you want effective in terms of gaining top of mind awareness, digital in our world was very new then. In 2013, there was. It's not like there was no digital. It was still relatively okay. And the kind of, so it's not that we didn't do digital investment. We did, but there was like, and the effect of it on eventual numbers and all that never kind of made sense to go there. But at that point of time, television was the most important medium to run with.
And in terms of the strategies, the target group, the consumer insight, was it competition led? Like, was there some of that in the context when this was being thought of?
Not really. Like I said, so you have two products that you sell, right? These two almost kind of go at a 60-40 whatever ratio in terms of your sales numbers, right? So obviously Excel is one of the more expensive products. So it was targeted to individual homeowners, right? It's not really bought by housing societies and gated communities and all that, because they have their own, what do you call it? It's a different decision when you're buying paint in those scenarios, right? So this was targeted to tier 2 cities or even the tier 1 cities, but the individual homeowner versus residential buildings. So for example, you and me, Saurabh, living in gated societies or whatever, that time you also lived in Bombay. So in 2013, for example, we never thought about the exterior of the building.
Yeah. In fact, I used to always find it very funny whenever I used to roam around in Bombay, that Bombay's got the worst looking buildings from outside. I think maybe because of the rain, people never ever paint the outside at all. I mean, all of Bombay is black and muddy on the outside. Versus the Delhi or versus the Bangalore, you'll always find a lot more probably care being taken on the outside of a building.
It's not just, one is the rain, other one is the societies are really badly formed sometimes, right? And it depends on how much money the society has and which builder built it and how he's kind of formed corpus for these kind of maintenances, right?
So, Chandan, tell us a little bit more about the consumer inciting process. So when you would have arrived from the brief to say that I need an ad for exterior paints, and it's a competitive market. There are two kind of weathers. There is summer and then there is rains. And then you would have come on to, this is all that is possible. So is it something from the consumer inciting journey that you want to share with us on how did this, sort of creative come to life?
So we did a UNA, right? There was a UNA which clearly came and spelled out what is expected amongst these homeowners for their exteriors, right? And the lens that they go through of trying to protect their homes. Because again, this is not, so there was Suraksha, for example, on the mass end of things, right? But at the premium end of things, people really spend money in getting their premium products and all that. They usually have a 2 to 3 year cycle of painting their exteriors and at least painting their interiors in and around the same time. Right? Kerala, for example, goes ahead and paints their house almost every year.
And was there a worry of distinctivity? The fact that you'll have a lot of players in the market wanting to give a similar message. So how does Nerolac Excel specifically get the attribution?
So amazingly, right, Nerolac has this classic jingle which has been there for like donkey's years, right? I think it was first done in the 70s or late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Which is this Har Ghar Ki Raunak Badhani. So that was very distinctive to them, right? While Asian Paints is the market leader, they almost hold close to about 50% of the market in many ways, right? And more so, it comes from their strength in distribution than anything else, right? So apart from creating very memorable ads, they also have a very strong distribution presence as compared to any other paint brand, so to speak, right? The only other true national brand in that sense is Nerolac. So there are other brands like Berger and there is also Dulux. Now in the market you have a slew of like Nippon paints and there are Shalimar and there's whatever. JSW has just launched one of their own paint brands, right? Which is now. I'm talking 9 years back, there were essentially 4, right? Of the 4 of them, they had their relative strengths and they operated in certain markets with their relative strengths, right? So in that sense, the true challenger in all this was always Nerolac.
So I think from a distinctivity standpoint, the use of celebrity would have been your main weapon. And I think there must have been a lot of sweat thought about Shah Rukh versus somebody else.
Shah Rukh was already signed on when Nerolac embarked on this whole thing of healthy home paints. So this was one of the sessions where they went back to category codes of durability.
No, I think Shah Rukh has been used quite well. It's quite distinctive the way it comes on the ad.
Take us through behind the scenes, Chandan. What was your experience with the,
Must not have been very easy lugging around a 20-foot umbrella.
Actually, it's about 45 feet.
45 feet.
Yes. Hell of an umbrella to carry all around with you.
No, so there have been various gimmicks tried with it, right? Of trying to expand it in CG and all that, of shooting it with small umbrellas or all that. But and frankly, people have shot a lot in Kerala. People have shot a lot in Rajasthan. We wanted a different eye to look at it, right? So Ashish Khazanchi was my creative director there, who actually went on and was made a recommendation by the production house saying that why don't we look at somebody from abroad to do this. So we actually got this Spanish director called Eric Morales.
Oh, nice.
So Eric Morales, and he got his DOP from Spain as well, right? So it was a completely new set of eyes looking at India from a very different perspective, right? So what we see of Kerala or Rajasthan, which could have been very easily done by anybody else, but it's just that how you use the camera and how you use the people's reaction and how you go about it is completely different from what we regularly do.
Yeah.
That was one of the key things which was working behind this. And the most important thing was make the umbrella.
What I really like about the ad in some parts of it is, one is that whole the pride of the owner standing in front of the boat. When he's standing with that whole potty and that whole thing behind. So that whole pride of I got this. I got a solution here. I'm gonna be in charge. So that was something which I found really interesting. The other thing which I liked is when the umbrella went up and you had the passerby looking, it made it happen, and so some of those subtle nuances, I think they really engage you with.
So they were not people who were made to act, if you know what I mean. So it was a genuine people in and around the shoot as we were doing it. Okay, and because it was captured, we decided to keep it. So it was not like people were made to exasperate or, oh, what happened, right?
What are you saying?
Wow.
So a lot of it is genuine reactions of people around. So strangely, we didn't actually do the song when we were writing the film. The song was done as after the film got, or while the edit got put together is when the song was a surprise factor that came.
And tell us more about the outcome. So did you do some kind of a track after it? Did you did it shift business? What are some of the outcome of the film?
Of course, we saw a couple of basic points jumps in the top of mind awareness. I believe the sales also went up by a couple of percentage points.
Wonderful conversation. So, Saurabh, what are the 3 learnings and takeaways you would like to share from this conversation?
This is definitely, one of the most exciting conversations that we have had, and I think just how engaged all 3 of us were there in this conversation just shows how much of fun this was, right? And how engaged we felt by this particular campaign.
Right.
Now, before we even get into the top 3 learnings, what I want to talk about is that, how interesting is it that a lot of categories have got so many layers, We never knew that there's a difference between an interior paint or exterior paint. An exterior paint has got very different reasons for usage. So firstly, for a marketeer, understanding the exact moment of consumption and what is the role that the product plays in it is very important, and that's really the base of it. Yeah. But now getting on to the top 3 learnings for me.
Right.
I think the first learning for me was really the fact that, how if you can create the right brand asset, like in this case, the umbrella, it can be a metaphor for both the things. It can be a metaphor what the product does, and it can be a metaphor how the user will feel, right? So if you see the umbrella as it went up, one, it is a metaphor to say that whether it is rain or sun, my paint protects your house. At the same time, the pride that he found in the owner saying that, I got this, I'm in control. It again, through the metaphor of the umbrella, it shows, it gives a reassurance that if you use this paint, you're going to feel confident, in charge, your house is never going to let you down, right? So I think at the heart of the creativity or the creative idea is to build that asset which solves for both what does the product do and what does it make the consumer feel like. So in my opinion, that's the first learning. The second learning is that, typically when we think of a brand communication strategy, we really try to figure out one occasion, one product, that's it, right? We rarely try to think of multiple edits. So if you have a soap ad, right? In a soap ad, you rarely have an ad separately for washing hands and an ad separately for bathing. A Lifebuoy might talk about, Tandurusti ki Shakti, or a Lux might say you feel glamorous, but we don't really try to own the large occasions. In this case, they were very clear that there are 2 occasions. There is rains and then there is sunlight. And for both these occasions, our brand is perfect and it fits for for different parts of the country, right? So as brands get scale in our country, we have to think of regional strategies, and the same brand might be used differently in different regions. Right. And I think that is very important for a marketer to take out, that am I tapping into all of the regional nuances and the occasion nuances? Yeah. For me, the third big takeout in this advertising is the fact that, we tend to believe that, only Indians understand Indian culture, or if I'm making an ad which is really rooted in the society, maybe should I get somebody who only knows how to do this? But here, the idea that they went in for a Spanish director who will have very different art nuances, who would look at the poses very differently, who will depict, traditional cities of the country very differently, I think was what added a lot of creative magic to it. So sometimes being bold and being able to trust the craft of people who can build something new to an advertising builds in a lot of magic. Yeah. And hence, for me, the top 3 takeouts, right, in summary, is first, build the right metaphor for your brand, which solves for both the usage as well as what it makes the consumer feel. Second, look for capturing all of the occasion insights, and hence, if you need multiple edits, don't be afraid to propose them. And third, look at ways to enhance creativity, be a little bold, try something different, maybe get a director from a different region, and maybe magic will unfold. So for me, in this conversation, these are the top 3 takeaways.
Super. And these are very different than what we have discussed before, Saurabh, and I am sure this is going to help the aspiring advertisers and marketers to build their strategy with these things. That if I have to summarize, it's like choosing the right metaphor for your audience and solve the usage of that. Second is, so different for different occasions, for all occasions, right? And the third one is also very important. Sometimes we have to lose the control, and we have to trust the creativity, and that's where the magic happens. So thank you for sharing all three takeaways, and a lot to learn from you and from the guests. So I'm just wondering, what is next, Saurabh?
Yeah, I think we've been having a lot of fun. And, so we've been talking only about national ads so far, Maybe it's time to explore something different, because sometimes the real challenge for a creative person can come with a, very different experience. So maybe, sometimes the richest insights come, or the richest challenges comes by the smallest brands or by the most regional place. So maybe next week we should try something really different and explore something maybe from a part of the country where there's a real challenge to a creative person and some real magic unfolded.
Yes, I think it's a good direction, Saurabh. We should actually explore the locals and regionals also. And I have something in my mind. I have a guest, who can actually talk about something local. She has worked in local to regional to national brands as well. So there is a brand called MP Jewelers. Probably we can discuss about that, how unconventionally they have captured the market with a different market strategy.
Great. Looking forward to next week then.
Yes.